Olivia Brennan stood in the doorway of her corner office, arms crossed, watching Marcus Reed gather his things at exactly 5:25. 4 years she had worked in this building, and 4 years she had watched this man leave at the same time every single day without fail. Tonight, something in her snapped. "Why won't you date?" The question left her mouth before she could stop it. Marcus froze, his hand on the door handle. 4 years, Marcus. Not once. Everyone talks about it. What are you hiding? He turned slowly, and for the first time, Olivia saw something flicker behind those calm gray eyes. Not anger, not defensiveness, just a weariness so deep it seemed to have no bottom. "You really want to know?" Olivia nodded, her heart suddenly pounding. She had no idea that his answer would shatter everything she thought she understood about love, about sacrifice, about the promises people make and the ones they actually keep. 6 months earlier, Olivia Brennan had walked into Brennan and Associates Financial Group as its youngest CFO in company history. The nameplate on her door felt like both an achievement and an accusation. Her father had built this firm from nothing, and now, at 31, she was expected to prove that his retirement was a transition rather than a surrender. The first week, she buried herself in performance reports. Numbers never lied. Numbers never whispered behind your back about nepotism or questioned whether you had earned your seat at the table. She reviewed every department, every team lead, every analyst, searching for patterns that would help her understand the machine she now commanded. That was when she first noticed Marcus Reed. His file was remarkable in its consistency. 4 years of flawless performance reviews. Not a single error in his quarterly reports. Client satisfaction ratings that consistently ranked in the top 3% of the entire company. He was the kind of employee that firms fought to recruit and competitors tried to poach. Yet he had declined every promotion offered to him. 3 times he had been recommended for team lead. 3 times he had politely refused. Olivia called him into her office on a Tuesday afternoon. He arrived exactly on time, neither early nor late, and sat across from her with the patient stillness of a man who had learned to wait. "Mr. Reed, I've been reviewing your file." She kept her voice professionally neutral. "You're one of our strongest performers. Why have you turned down every leadership opportunity?" Marcus met her eyes without flinching. "I prefer to leave at 5:30. The team lead position requires more hours." Olivia leaned forward, genuinely puzzled. In her world, ambition was oxygen. Everyone wanted to climb. Everyone wanted more. Most people would kill for these opportunities. "Why don't you want to advance?" "Not everyone, Miss Brennan." His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Some of us have already found what we're climbing toward." She had dismissed him then, frustrated by his cryptic answer and his apparent lack of drive, but his words lingered in her mind like a splinter she could not quite remove. What Marcus Reed climbed toward became clear at 5:32 that same evening. He pulled out of the parking garage and merged onto the expressway, his route so familiar he could have driven it blindfolded. 20 minutes later, he turned into the tree-lined entrance of Street, Catherine's long-term care facility. The nurses at the front desk nodded as he passed. They had stopped asking him to sign in years ago. Room 217 was at the end of the east corridor, where the afternoon light lasted longest. Jennifer lay exactly as she had for 4 years, her chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of the ventilator. Her hair had grown longer since the accident, and Marcus had learned to brush it himself, the way she used to like it swept back from her face. He pulled the chair close to her bed and took her hand. "Hey, sweetheart. Long day today. We got a new CFO, the old man's daughter. She seems smart, but she asked me why I don't want to be a manager." He laughed softly. "I didn't know how to explain that I already have the most important job in the world." He read to her for an hour, the same book they had started before the accident. A romance novel she had picked up at an airport bookstore, the pages now soft from handling. He never skipped ahead. They would finish it together, even if together looked different now than either of them had imagined. At 7 o'clock, he drove to Lily's after-school program. His daughter burst through the doors with the boundless energy of an 8-year-old who had been sitting still too long. "Daddy," Mr. Peters told the funniest joke today about a penguin and a snowman. "Did you tell Mom?" Marcus buckled her seatbelt and kissed the top of her head. "I did," she would have laughed. They cooked dinner together that night, spaghetti with too much garlic, the way Jennifer used to make it. Lily set 3 places at the table, including the empty chair they never removed. After homework and bath time and one more chapter of Charlotte's Web, Marcus tucked his daughter into bed and turned off the light. He sat alone in the dark kitchen until nearly midnight, staring at the wedding photo on the refrigerator. In it, Jennifer was laughing at something he had whispered in her ear, her veil caught in the wind, both of them so young they barely looked like adults. He did not cry. He had stopped crying after the first year, when he realized that tears changed nothing, and energy was better spent on the living. But he allowed himself these quiet moments of remembering, of honoring what had been, of waiting for what might still come. Some promises, he had learned, did not have expiration dates. A month passed, and Olivia found herself paying closer attention to Marcus Reed than she wanted to admit. It started small. She noticed that he ate lunch alone at his desk, never joining the groups that gathered in the break room. She noticed that he deflected personal questions with practiced ease, redirecting conversations to work topics with the skill of someone who had done it 1,000 times. She noticed that his desk held no photographs, no personal items, nothing that would hint at who he became after 5:30 each evening. The first real crack in his armor appeared on a Thursday afternoon. Olivia was walking to her car when she spotted Marcus in the parking lot, phone pressed to his ear. She slowed her pace, not quite eavesdropping, but not hurrying away either. "I'll be there in 20. His voice was different than she had ever heard it. Soft, worried, tender. How was she today? A pause. Then, did she seem comfortable? "Good, that's good. Tell her I'm on my way." He ended the call and drove away without noticing Olivia standing 3 rows over, her car keys forgotten in her hand. The next morning, she did something she was not entirely proud of. She asked Tina in HR to pull Marcus Reed's emergency contact information. Just in case, she told herself. For the file, there was only one number listed: Street Catherine's long-term care facility. Olivia spent her lunch hour researching the facility on her laptop. Street Catherine specialized in patients with severe brain injuries, comas, and persistent vegetative states. They provided round-the-clock care for people who could not care for themselves, people whose families had not given up hope. Her hands trembled slightly as she closed the browser. Marcus Reed had someone at that facility, someone he visited every single day, someone he called on his way over to ask if she seemed comfortable. Who was she? That Friday, the company held its monthly happy hour at a bar downtown. Olivia attended because she was expected to, nursing a glass of wine while making small talk with department heads who were trying too hard to impress her. Marcus, of course, was not there. $5 says he's got a secret girlfriend, Tina announced to a group gathered by the pool table. No man that good-looking stays single for 4 years without a reason. Or maybe he's just weird, someone else offered. You ever notice he never talks about his life? It's like he doesn't exist outside this office. Olivia said nothing. She knew more than they did now, but the knowledge sat heavy in her chest, feeling less like information and more like a burden she had not asked to carry. That weekend, Marcus and Lily made their regular visit to Street Catherine's. Lily had spent all of Saturday morning on a new drawing, her tongue poking out in concentration as she selected exactly the right shades of green and blue. "It's us, at the park," she explained, holding up the finished picture. "See, there's you, and there's me, and there's Mommy. She's wearing her yellow sundress, the one she wore on my birthday before." Marcus studied the drawing with the seriousness it deserved. In the picture, all 3 of them were standing, all 3 of them were smiling, All three of them were together. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Let's go show her." They taped the picture to the wall beside Jennifer's bed, next to dozens of others that Lily had made over the years. A gallery of hope rendered in crayon and colored pencil, documenting every holiday, every milestone, every ordinary day that Jennifer had missed, and Lily refused to let her miss entirely. "Do you think she sees them?" Lily asked, her small hand wrapped around her mother's unmoving fingers. Marcus knelt beside his daughter, his eyes on his wife's peaceful face. "I think she feels them, and that's enough." He believed that. He had to believe that. The alternative was unbearable. The annual charity gala was the most important event on Brennan and Associates' social calendar. Major clients attended, potential investors circled, and the company's reputation was polished and displayed like silver at a formal dinner. Olivia needed Marcus there. He was the only analyst who understood the intricacies of their investment portfolios well enough to answer the technical questions that wealthy clients inevitably asked. She summoned him to her office to deliver the news. "The Hartwell Foundation Gala is next Saturday evening. I need you there." Marcus's expression did not change, but something in his posture shifted almost imperceptibly. "I have commitments. Reschedule them." "I can't." Olivia felt her frustration rising. She was accustomed to people saying yes to her, especially employees whose careers depended on her good opinion. "Mr. Reed, this is not optional." "Then, I apologize, but I won't be able to attend." They stared at each other across her desk, neither willing to yield. Finally, Olivia asked a question she had never thought to ask before. "Every evening? You have commitments every single evening?" Something passed across Marcus's face. Surprise, perhaps, or the faint recognition of being truly seen. "Yes, Miss Brennan. Every single one." Olivia leaned back in her chair, studying him. The analyst who never networked, the widower who was not technically a widower, the man who left at 5:30 every day without fail because someone somewhere was waiting for him. "What if I moved the gala to Saturday afternoon?" she heard herself say. "Would that work?" Marcus blinked. In 4 years at this company, no one had ever adjusted a schedule to accommodate him. No one had ever asked what would make things easier rather than simply demanding compliance. "You would do that? I need you there, and you have somewhere to be in the evenings. This seems like a reasonable compromise." She kept her voice businesslike, but something softer had crept in around the edges. "I'll move the start time to 2 o'clock, but I need you there until at least 4:45. Marcus considered for a long moment. 4:45. No later. Done. The gala was a success by every measurable standard. Marcus arrived in a dark suit that made him look like a different person entirely, confident and commanding in a way that his usual office demeanor only hinted at. He charmed the clients, answered every technical question with ease, and conducted himself with a quiet authority that Olivia found herself watching whenever she thought he was not looking. At 4:43, he approached her near the dessert table. "Miss Brennan, thank you for the accommodation. I need to leave now." She nodded, surprised by the small pang of disappointment she felt. "Of course. You've done more than enough." He was gone before the clock struck 4:45. A silver-haired investor sidled up to Olivia, champagne glass in hand. "Your best guy just left. Everything all right?" Olivia watched the door where Marcus had disappeared, something shifting in her chest. "He has somewhere more important to be." The words surprised her. She had never said anything like that about an employee before. She had never believed that anything could be more important than the work. But watching Marcus Reed walk out of that ballroom, she wondered if perhaps she had been measuring importance by the wrong scale entirely. Olivia began to notice things she had been too busy to see before. She noticed that Marcus always took the stairs instead of the elevator, as if he had learned to conserve his emotional energy for places it mattered more. She noticed that he kept a small silver watch in his desk drawer, one he sometimes held but never wore. She noticed that on the rare occasions when he smiled, the expression transformed his entire face and made him look years younger. She wondered who he had been before whatever had happened to make him this way. The answer came in pieces over the following weeks. Piece 1 arrived when Marcus called in sick without warning on a Thursday morning. When he returned the next day, a coworker asked if he had enjoyed his day off. "My daughter was sick," Marcus said simply. "She's better now." Daughter. He had a daughter. Olivia pulled his file again, something she was doing with uncomfortable frequency. Emergency contact number 2 was indeed a child, Lily Reed, age 8. The contact number was for her elementary school. There was no mother listed anywhere. Piece 2 came later that same week. Marcus had left his desk briefly, and Olivia found herself walking past it, her eyes drawn to the single personal item he kept in his drawer. The silver watch. She could see now that it was a woman's watch, delicate and old-fashioned, the kind that might have been passed down through generations. A wife's watch, a mother's watch. Piece 3 arrived one evening when Olivia stayed late to finish a report. At 6 o'clock, she glanced out her window and noticed Marcus's car still in the parking lot. This was unusual. He was always gone by 5:35 at the latest. She walked down to the lot, telling herself she was just getting fresh air. His car was parked in its usual spot, and through the windshield, she could see him sitting motionless in the driver's seat, his head resting on the steering wheel. Not sleeping, just still, just tired, just holding himself together in the only private space available to him. Olivia raised her hand to knock on the window, then stopped. This was not hers to intrude upon. Whatever weight Marcus Reed carried, he had not asked her to help him carry it. She walked back to the building without making a sound, but the image stayed with her. A good man, alone in a parking lot, gathering the strength to face whatever waited for him next. Meanwhile, at Street, Catherine's, Marcus read Jennifer the next chapter of their book. Lily had recovered from her fever and insisted on coming along. She held her mother's hand while Marcus read, occasionally adding commentary about the character's choices that made Marcus smile despite himself. "Mommy, I got better," Lily reported, her voice carrying the serious weight of important news. "Daddy took care of me. Just like you would have. He made soup and everything, even though he put too much salt in it." "I did not," Marcus protested. "You totally did, but I ate it anyway because you tried hard." Marcus looked at his wife's peaceful face, then at his daughter's animated one. The two people he loved most in the world, one who could not hear him and one who heard everything. "Your mother," he said quietly, "would be very proud of how brave you were." Lily beamed. "I know. I told her already." Street Catherine's long-term care facility was not on Olivia's calendar. The visit was officially about the company's annual charitable donations, specifically the decision about which healthcare nonprofits would receive grants from the Brennan Foundation. But as she walked through the front doors with the facility director, Olivia knew that she was really here because of the man who visited room 217 every evening. The tour was comprehensive. They saw the physical therapy wing, the family support center, the memorial garden where patients' loved ones could find moments of peace. The director spoke about the challenges of long-term care, the importance of family involvement, the small victories that sustained hope. "Our residents are here because someone refused to give up on them," the director explained. "Every person in this building has at least one person who believes they're worth fighting for." They turned down the east corridor, and Olivia's heart began to pound. Through the window of room 217, she could see Marcus Reed sitting beside a hospital bed. A woman lay motionless beneath the covers, her chest rising and falling with mechanical regularity. Marcus was reading aloud from a book, his lips moving, his free hand wrapped around the woman's fingers. Olivia stopped walking. She could not move, could not breathe, could not look away. "That's one of our longest residents," the director said, following her gaze. "Traumatic brain injury from a car accident about 4 years ago. Her husband comes every day without fail, rain or shine, weekday or weekend, every single evening. He reads to her, talks to her, brushes her hair. Husband. The word hit Olivia like a physical blow. Not a mother, not a sister, his wife. Some of our families struggle to visit once a month, the director continued. But that man? He's never missed a day, not one day in 4 years. Olivia watched as Marcus turned a page and continued reading, completely unaware of her presence. His face was soft in a way she had never seen at the office, stripped of all the professional armor he wore between 9 and 5:30. This was the man he really was. This was where he went. This was why he refused promotions and skipped happy hours and left at the same time every single day. He was not cold or antisocial or lacking ambition. He was in love. Still, after everything, Olivia walked out of the building without completing the tour. She sat in her car in the parking lot and cried for the first time in years. Huge gasping sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her chest. She was 31 years old. She had never loved anyone the way Marcus Reed loved the woman in that hospital bed. She had never even come close. She had chosen career over connection at every crossroads, telling herself that love could wait, that there would be time later, that success was the thing worth sacrificing for. But Marcus had sacrificed success for love. He had chosen presence over promotion, devotion over advancement, promises over ambition. And sitting in that parking lot, watching the autumn sun sink toward the horizon, Olivia realized that she had been measuring her own worth by the wrong scale entirely. She returned to work the next day and said nothing. She treated Marcus exactly as she always had, professional and courteous, though now she ended their meetings 5 minutes early without being asked. Now she never scheduled anything that might make him late. Now she understood what 5:30 meant. It meant I love you. It meant I'm coming. It meant I'll never stop. Some secrets, she had learned, were not hers to expose, but she could honor them quietly, in the small spaces where respect lived. The Whitmore acquisition required long hours and careful analysis, which meant Marcus and Olivia found themselves working together more closely than ever before. She made sure they finished by 5:15 every day. He noticed. "You don't have to accommodate me," he said one afternoon. "I know it creates extra work for you." Olivia looked up from her laptop. "Everyone has their priorities, Mr. Reed. I'm learning to respect that." Something shifted between them after that. The conversations grew longer, moving beyond spreadsheets and projections into territory that felt almost personal. Olivia told him about the pressure of following in her father's footsteps, about the board members who questioned her qualifications, about the loneliness of being the boss's daughter in a company full of people who saw her name before they saw her work. Marcus listened without judgment, without advice, without trying to fix anything. He simply understood, and that understanding felt like a gift. "Do you ever feel like you're running toward something no one else sees?" she asked one evening. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Every day. The almost moment came on a Wednesday when Lily's after-school program closed unexpectedly for a staff training day. Marcus had no choice but to bring her to the office. Olivia discovered them in the break room. Marcus heating up chicken nuggets in the microwave, while Lily colored at the table with intense concentration. "Miss Brennan, this is my daughter, Lily." Lily looked up with curious eyes. "You're pretty. Daddy didn't say you were pretty." Marcus's ears turned red. "Lily, what?" "It's true." Olivia found herself smiling. "Thank you, Lily." "What are you coloring?" "A picture for my mom." Lily held up the drawing, a crayon rendering of 3 figures standing in front of a house. "We're going to put it on her wall with all the others." Olivia glanced at Marcus, saw the shadow that crossed his face, and understood more than Lily intended to reveal. "It's beautiful. Your mother is lucky to have such a talented artist." Lily beamed. "That's what Daddy says too." Later, when Marcus stepped out to retrieve Lily's jacket from the car, Olivia found herself alone with the little girl. "Your dad is a good man," she said. "You're lucky to have him." Lily looked up from her coloring, suddenly serious in the way that children sometimes become when they are about to say something important. He's the best, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Olivia wanted to ask what hard meant. She wanted to understand the weight this child carried so gracefully. But Marcus returned before she could form the question, and the moment passed like smoke through a screen door. "Are you my dad's friend?" Lily asked as they were leaving. Olivia paused. "I think so." Lily nodded solemnly. "Good. He needs friends. He doesn't let people in." The words stayed with Olivia long after the Reeds had gone home. He doesn't let people in. Such a simple observation from an 8-year-old, and yet it contained everything she needed to know about the man she could not stop thinking about. Now they stood in her office at 7 in the evening, 6 months of history hanging between them, and Olivia had finally asked the question that had been burning in her chest since the day she saw him through that hospital window. "Why won't you date?" Marcus did not sit down. He stood near the door, his hand still resting on the handle, ready to leave at any moment. But he did not leave. "You really want to know?" "Yes." He was quiet for so long that Olivia thought he might not answer. Then he began to speak, and his voice carried a weight that made the air in the room feel heavier. "My wife, Jennifer. 4 years ago, a drunk driver ran a red light and hit her car. She was on her way home from her sister's baby shower, 43 minutes away from our front door." He paused. "She survived, technically, but she never woke up." Olivia felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. She had known, from her visit to Street Catherine's, but hearing him say it was different. Hearing the practiced flatness of his voice, the way he reported the facts like data points in a quarterly report, made her chest ache. "The doctors told me she would never recover," Marcus continued. "Persistent vegetative state. They recommended removing life support. Letting her go, they called it. Like she was a balloon I could simply choose to release." He looked at Olivia then, and she saw the 4 years of accumulated grief shimmering behind his calm facade. Her parents agreed with the doctors. They held a memorial service. They mourned her and moved on. A bitter smile crossed his face. "But I couldn't. Because she's still here. She's still breathing. Her heart is still beating. And I made her a promise." "What promise?" "In sickness and in health. For better or for worse, until death do us part." Marcus spoke the words like a prayer. "She hasn't died, Olivia. She's just waiting, and I won't abandon her while she waits." The silence stretched between them. Olivia thought about all the assumptions she had made about this man. Cold, antisocial, unambitious. How wrong she had been. How terribly, completely wrong. "Why didn't you let her go?" she whispered. "Everyone else did." Marcus's voice softened. "Because she would have waited for me. If our situations were reversed, Jennifer would have been there every day, reading to me, talking to me, refusing to give up. That's who she was. That's who she still is, somewhere inside." He paused. "And Lily needs to know her mother is still here, even if she can't hug her back. Some promises don't have expiration dates." Olivia felt tears burning behind her eyes. "Do you still love her?" "Every day." The words came without hesitation. "More than the day I married her." "Is that why you don't date?" Marcus finally met her gaze directly, and Olivia saw something there that made her breath catch. Recognition, understanding, the acknowledgement of a question that had layers beyond its surface meaning. "You asked why I don't date." "That's why. To me, it would be cheating. Not legally, not technically, but to the vows I made, it would be a betrayal, and I won't do that to her. Not while she's still breathing." The words hung in the air between them. Olivia thought about herself at 31, unmarried, unattached, having never loved anyone enough to wait for them through anything. She thought about all the relationships she had ended because they interfered with her career, all the feelings she had set aside because they were inconvenient. And here was Marcus Reed, who had built his entire life around a promise to a woman who could not even open her eyes to see him keeping it. "I'm sorry," she said, and her voice cracked on the words. For every time I thought you were cold, for every time I judged you for leaving early, for every time I assumed you just didn't care. You didn't know." His voice was gentle, without accusation. "No one does. I prefer it that way." He opened the door, then paused. "Thank you for asking, Olivia. Most people just assume. They decide I'm strange or antisocial or hiding something shameful. You're the first person in 4 years who actually wanted to know the truth." He stepped into the darkened hallway, and just before the door closed behind him, Olivia heard him add, "It means more than you know." She stood alone in her office for a long time after he left, staring at the empty doorway, feeling something shift inside her that she could not quite name. Olivia did not sleep that night. She lay in her expensive bed in her expensive apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying Marcus's words in her mind. Some promises don't have expiration dates. She thought about the woman lying in room 217, and the man who visited her every single day, and the little girl who drew pictures for a mother who might never see them. She thought about her own life, the choices she had made, the relationships she had sacrificed on the altar of success. 31 years old, CFO of a successful company, and she had never loved anyone the way Marcus Reed loved his wife. Had she ever loved anyone at all? The next morning, she arrived at the office early, half expecting things to feel different. But Marcus was already at his desk, working on the same reports he always worked on, and he greeted her with the same professional nod he always gave. Nothing had changed, and everything had changed. Olivia stopped pushing him to network. She stopped hinting about promotions. She stopped treating his 5:30 departures as a personal inconvenience. Instead, she began to protect them, scheduling around them, defending them to board members who questioned why their best analyst never attended evening events. "He has responsibilities," she told them. "More important ones than cocktail parties." She made another decision that she told no one about. She called Street, Catherine's, and asked to speak with the director she had met during her tour. She explained that Brennan and Associates wanted to make an anonymous donation to the long-term care fund, specifically to cover the costs for a patient named Jennifer Reed. "How much?" the director asked. "Enough to cover her care for the next 5 years. Whatever that number is." The director was silent for a moment. "That's very generous. May I ask why this patient specifically?" Olivia thought about Marcus, sitting in his car in the parking lot, finding the strength to face another day. She thought about Lily, drawing pictures for a mother who might never wake up. She thought about love that did not ask for anything in return. "Because some promises deserve to be supported," she said. "Even the ones we don't make ourselves." The following weekend, Marcus and Lily made their usual visit to Jennifer's room. Lily had created a new drawing, and she chattered excitedly as they walked down the east corridor. "This one's different, Daddy. Look." Marcus examined the picture. 3 figures stood in the foreground, Lily and Jennifer and himself, but in the background, slightly apart from the family group, stood a 4th figure, a woman with dark brown hair, watching them with a small smile. "Who's that?" Marcus asked. "The nice lady at your work, the one who asked about you." Lily studied her own drawing critically. "She looks lonely, don't you think? Like she's looking for her people but hasn't found them yet." Marcus stared at the crayon figure, something shifting in his chest that he could not quite identify. Olivia Brennan, rendered in a child's simple strokes, standing at the edge of his family portrait. "Did you tell her about Mommy?" Lily asked. "Yes. Good." Lily nodded with the certainty of the very young. She seemed like someone who would understand. That Monday, Marcus did something he had not done in 4 years. When his team announced they were going to lunch together, instead of declining as he always did, he hesitated. "I can stay for 30 minutes, he said. His coworkers stared at him as if he had announced he was moving to Mars. "You're coming to lunch?" Tina from HR asked. "Willingly? 30 minutes, Marcus repeated. "That's all I can spare." From across the room, Olivia watched him leave with the group, something warm spreading through her chest. It was a small thing, half an hour with colleagues, but she understood what it meant. The walls he had built were not coming down, but he was opening a door, just a crack, just enough to let a sliver of light through. She smiled, and when Marcus glanced back over his shoulder before stepping into the elevator, she thought she saw him smile too. 3 months later, Olivia received a phone call that changed everything. It was the director of Street Catherine's, calling to thank her for the donation that had kept the facility running through a difficult quarter. But at the end of the call, almost as an afterthought, she mentioned something else. "You might be interested to know about one of our long-term patients, Jennifer Reed. She showed signs of responsiveness last week for the first time since her admission." Olivia's heart stopped. What kind of signs? Her husband was reading to her, and she squeezed his hand. Not a reflex, a purposeful squeeze. Her doctors are cautiously optimistic. Olivia thanked her and hung up the phone. She sat very still at her desk for a long time, thinking about Marcus reading to his wife day after day, year after year, waiting for exactly this kind of miracle. She did not tell him she knew. She did not need to. The evening after Jennifer squeezed Marcus's hand, the Reed family gathered in room 217 for the first time as a family that might have a future. Lily sat on one side of the bed, her small fingers wrapped around her mother's hand. Marcus sat on the other, reading from a familiar book, the same one he had been reading for 4 years. His voice was steady, but his free hand trembled slightly. "And they lived," he read, "not happily ever after, because that's not how real life works, but they lived. Together." And that was enough. He closed the book and looked at his wife's peaceful face. Her eyelids fluttered, just barely, and her fingers twitched against his palm. "Take your time," he whispered. "I'm not going anywhere. I never went anywhere. I'll be here when you're ready." Lily climbed onto the bed and curled up against her mother's side, something the nurses usually discouraged but tonight allowed. "We'll wait, Mommy, however long it takes. That's what Daddy always says. Some promises don't have expiration dates." Outside the room, unseen by the family within, Olivia Brennan stood watching through the window. She held a small bouquet of flowers that she had brought from the gift shop downstairs. She did not go in. She placed the flowers on the nurse's station desk with a note that said simply, "For Jennifer Reed, room 217. And she stood for a moment longer, watching the man who had taught her what love looked like when it was not convenient, not easy, not returned in any of the ways the world usually measured. Marcus looked up suddenly, as if sensing her presence. Through the glass, their eyes met. Olivia raised her hand in a small wave, then turned and walked away down the corridor. She did not look back. She did not need to. Some things were not meant to be spoken. Some connections existed in the spaces between words, in the things that did not need to be said because they were already understood. Marcus watched her go, his hand still wrapped around his wife's fingers. He did not follow her. She did not expect him to. But as Olivia pushed through the front doors of Street Catherine's and stepped into the cool evening air, she found herself smiling. She had come here looking for something she could not name. A reason to believe that love was real, perhaps. Evidence that people still made promises they intended to keep. She had found it in a hospital room where a man read stories to a woman who might never wake up. She had found it in a little girl's crayon drawings, and a silver watch in a desk drawer, and 5:30 departures that were sacred appointments with devotion itself. She had found it, and now she knew it was possible. Marcus Reed might never be hers. Jennifer might wake up tomorrow, or might sleep forever. The future was uncertain, as all futures were, but Olivia was 31 years old, and for the first time in her life, she understood what she was looking for. Not success, not power, not a corner office with her name on the door. Just someone who would visit her every day, no matter what. Someone who would read to her, and wait for her, and refuse to give up. Someone who understood that some promises did not have expiration dates, She walked to her car and drove home through the darkening streets of Chicago, and somewhere across town, Marcus Reed was reading another chapter to his wife, and a little girl was drawing another picture for the gallery on the wall. And in room 217 at Street Catherine's long-term care facility, Jennifer Reed's fingers twitched against the hand of the man who had never stopped believing she would come back to him. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes being seen was the greatest gift of all.